Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello, and welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast. I'm very glad you're here. I like the name of this episode. I don't know why, but it just works for me. It's called Shifting from Summer to Stable. I like it because it implies that summer wasn't stable. So it's short and it kind of makes me chuckle a little bit. And over here, summer has been a little rough. Not because I'm a working mom, not because I have 4 kids, not because it's hot and that makes me a little cranky, and not because I'm trying to help all of these kids figure out what to do with themselves and keep them fed. No. I mean, yes, there's challenges there, but the real difficulty for me in summer really relates to the unmet needs of my son. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what those are, and yet they are profound, actually, is the word that's coming to my mind, and prolific. And so I find myself here, nearly finished. At the time of this recording, I still have like 2 weeks until I go back. And I'm eager for the built-in supports of school to return. And yet, here's what I also want to add here, is I'm also very hopeful. So when I say it's been hard, it's, going to bed and thinking, wow, this is not working. And really being so clear that we need to make some changes, like a lot. And, to have the things that aren't working be so important, the well-being of my child, the happiness of my child, they are the highest values for me. So even though it's been hard, I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope because I see opportunities to support my son and our family. And I think that's actually what's making my experience manageable. It's hard, and I have a lot of hope. It's very, very different than having hard with no hope. And I'm sure there's areas, or maybe even you're like, yeah, I don't have any hope, Kara. This is just going to be how it is. This is my life. And so if you don't have hope, I especially want you to listen right now and to every episode beyond. No, just kidding. But I want you to leave with a gift of hope, even if it's just a sliver. And before we get into the content of this episode, the real meat, if you will, I want to share what I have been working on, ideating, creating for you all summer. I've been doing a lot of walks out in the hills behind my house and thinking and dreaming and kind of grappling with solving for some of the challenges that have come up in the Pathway to Peace coaching program that I offer and have offered, and talking to past and present clients and really putting my mind around what I want to bring next. So I'm really excited about it. And the thing that emerges most is that the community aspect that we have as part of the Pathway to Peace program is incredible. It's been incredible to watch it form, and the value from having just one space. Imagine this, just one space where you can be fully seen and understood, a place where you don't feel alone. It's really, really valuable, particularly because I think girlfriend relationships are different than husband relationships. Many of us in the community have really great husbands, like fabulous husbands. And yet, we still connect over some of the differences in the ways that typically men show up and moms show up. So it's a different space than what might be, part of your life already. And so having these spaces, I've gotten to see it transforms your whole week. And I've watched it. I've literally gotten to see it transform these women's lives. So as I mentioned just now, I'm remodeling the way that I structure the program. And there's actually two primary drivers. The first one has been on my mind for a very long time, and it's very important to me. And it is making what I offer more financially accessible to my community. Now, there's two very interesting aspects of financial accessibility. And one, I want to say, is real. Like the dollars and cents of, the demands, the healthcare cost, the inflation, hello, things are expensive, right? And so there's some situations where actually, right now we have our needs only and wants are wants. And so I want to acknowledge that that is real. And I still have not solved for that part of the financial accessibility of my community. But don't you worry, it's still on my mind. And then there's this other aspect of financial accessibility. And this one falls in the category of what I'll call perceived. Now, I want you to know I say this without judgment because I experience this too. This is also real, but it's real in a different way. And this is the aspect that I want to call out because I think it's something that I want you to think about because it's, I'd say the number one thing that I see stopping moms like you step into a supportive community and or any structure, not just this one. Could be therapy. So this aspect that I'm talking about is the obstacle of investing in yourself. And it's very likely that you have some obstacle as it relates to this. Over and over again, clients that have joined the program say, actually, it was my husband who pushed me and encouraged me to do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have. And I find this so fascinating and also relate that it's if someone else is kind of giving you permission or validating you to do this thing, then it's easier. It's almost like you don't have to take full responsibility for taking on the investment. So if you find yourself investing hundreds, maybe even thousands to support your child and or children, and find yourself spending maybe zero supporting yourself, or maybe very, very little in comparison to what you invest in your child, just consider that maybe there is an opportunity for you to care for yourself too. I'm not suggesting that you say, forget you kids, it's mommy only. No, that won't work. And again, I want to share this from a place of I'm a mom who has spent thousands investing in myself, kind of including coaching and therapy and hundreds of other things. Well, maybe not hundreds, a lot of other things. And I still have a hard time in some cases, right? A meeting you hear as someone that really does understand this from all the different perspectives, and yet also is a little bit heartbroken when I see this being the thing that stops moms from stepping in to something like this coaching community, or again, whatever thing it is that they see that they want. It's this real thing. The picture that I come up with is like a mama bear. We fiercely protect our children. And I think that's one of the most beautiful aspects of seeing the power of mother is this fierceness that comes with this protection and just deep concern for our children's well-being. And if it means that we have to hold our breaths so our children get enough air, we'll do it. Well, at least we'll try. And the point I want to make with this conversation is that there is a possibility, and I want you to consider the option that you both, you and your child, might be able to get what you need. Okay? So that's one aspect that I've been thinking of. And so for me, making it financially accessible means pricing in a way that I think is accessible to a lot of people. To all people, maybe not. And again, I'm still working on that. Okay, the second aspect that I have been really just deeply thinking about how to create this, particularly in seeing the value of this human to human, like face to face connection that yet is still virtual, and what works and what doesn't. And I'm kind of right now leaning a little bit away from social media personally, because I'm finding that the real human to human connection is just lacking. That I'm going there and I'm getting so distracted and sometimes entertained, let's be honest. And yet I'm not leaving feeling like I'm a part of a community, like I'm more known. It's just not necessarily the environment that I'm recognizing that is what I need. And same thing for many of my clients. So I'm guessing you can be like, yeah, it's different than it used to be. And, there's a big difference between like going over to somebody's house and seeing them at a park. And this is like, I want you to consider like when you get to the friendship level that you go to your friend's house, it's very different than, someone you might just see in passing by at church or maybe in school pickup. Like it's a very different relationship. And so that's the aspect of community that I have my eye on, that I'm looking to cultivate for this community. So we're going to be going to each other's houses, metaphorically. Okay. And then the other thing that's been like on my mind is, you know what? This doesn't have to all be so serious and hard. Like we can have fun. And quite simply, you guys are amazing and it's fun to do hard things together. I was an athlete in high school and a little bit in college. And, there's something about like doing a really hard workout with a group of women that are doing the same thing. So that's an aspect that I have on my mind too. I've been building it for you, and it's still going to be called Pathway to Peace, but instead of being Pathway to Peace coaching program, it's going to be a coaching community. You see what I did there? Just a subtle shift, but emphasizing that the community aspect is where we will grow together through the modality of coaching. Okay, so that's not changing. Yes, the doors are opening. So when you hear this, you will be able to say, hey, Kara, tell me more. And I will tell you more, and I will let you know what the next steps are. And I will be offering what I'm calling it introductory pricing, AKA lower pricing, for the first handful of ladies that do decide to join, because I'm trying to make, get you over for hors d'oeuvres, going with the house party thing. Okay. So I do hope you'll consider being one of the brave people that comes a little early to the party, because, I need help setting up. I just can't stop with this analogy. I love it. I don't know why I like that so much. Like one of my friends, he and I, we get into an analogy and like we just keep going with it. And I don't know, it just really entertains me. Okay. So on to our topic for the day. And I said it earlier, it's about this intentional shift from summer to stable. See, it makes me laugh a little bit. Also known as fall. So shifting from summer to fall. And what I'm going to bring to you in this episode can be used for any transition, but we're here now. So we're going to be talking about summer to stable. This visualization of us getting to the end of the runway, or like finishing summer and kind of being a little disheveled and just been like, oh my gosh, we landed, but like we crash landed. Like one of the tires fell off the plane, but it's on the ground and is maybe even like burning a little bit. And so what that means for us in our lived experience is like we're a little emotionally depleted, maybe discouraged. Maybe that hope for you that I was mentioning earlier is not there. Maybe desperate, maybe lonely. I mean, there's a lot of things. I think not every experience is going to be the same. Yours is going to be unique, but my guess is you relate to some aspect of what I'm describing. And many times we get to the end of these seasons that we're really having to push ourselves, and we kind of lost any sort of balance that we might have had. We lost some of the structure that was working for us to be able to care for ourselves and our children in a way that leaves us feeling fully alive and able to embrace both the joys and the sorrows of life. So here's what's predictable. All right. So you crash landed, your plane's like a little bit on fire. It's not going to explode, but like it's a little bit on fire. And so you start to slowly lick your wounds and bring the energy of that crash landing to the next season. So like that desperation, that depletedness, that hopelessness, And that very much informs how you show up for yourself, for your child, in all the ways. And you're aware that you're going to get back on your feet, but it's through the lens of that same hopelessness and desperate energy. So likely, it's not going to be very enticing, and it's going to be like the minimal. It was really aiming for survival. It's not aiming for beyond survival. It's aiming for survival. And, no harm or foul here. This is just kind of where we can predictably end up. And so then what happens is like you get back on your feet a little bit, like you kind of get a little breath of air, and then the holiday season hits. Okay. And then you're stuck in this constant cycle of trying to get 2 steps forward, but really you're getting 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards, because what's predictable in this special needs mom life is like we solve one challenge and we find 2 more. At least that's my experience. Okay. So let's talk about changing up the cycle, or what's predictable. And so my challenge for you today is to bring this little bit of awareness that we're going to create today and beyond, and have it go differently. Okay, that's a very simple challenge. And my vision for you in this challenge is true restoration. To be built back up, built better, built stronger, built more equipped to handle those challenges that will continue to come. And what I do have to point out, the analogies just keep coming, is that this is the perfect season for rooting and restoration. And here in California, I'm down in San Diego. I don't always mention that, but I'm down in San Diego. And in California, fall is the ideal time to plant. Some of you longer listeners might know that my previous career was in horticulture, so I know a lot about plants. And there's this fall season, there's still time for plants to get rooted. It's like they're still growing season, still warm enough. So there's still active growth. And so there's still time to get rooted and established, yet the heat is a little less intense. And so it's demanding less from these fragile plants as they enter this vulnerable stage of transplant. So then they get established, they rest for winter, and then springtime comes and boom, they are bursting with energy, vitality, and hopefully some flowers. I like flowers. Okay, so picture yourself as this lovely plant full of potential. And I want you to consider this conversation is about getting you rooted. Okay, now what does this look like? And I've kind of broken it down into a couple different steps. I like steps, so that's what I've done here. The first step might not be like the one you think of first, but it is actually closing the last chapter. So it's actually looking back before you look forward. So it's like, again, maybe you didn't think of that automatically, but this is a step I think a lot of us skip over. We're like, we just got to get far away from what happened. Let's move on. But before you do that, I want you to do a little pause and a little reflection, because it informs so much of what you'll want for your future. So consider if you're reading a novel and you just skip the last few pages of every chapter and go on to the next, you'll probably be fine. You'll get the gist of the story, but you might miss some of the really critical, enjoyable moments. So that's what I mean in let's close the chapter so that you can start the new one ready. What do I mean by closing? Okay, so this is completing with intention. It's putting a stake in the ground and saying, okay, that was then, this is now, today, and this is my future. It's kind of just putting a stopping point to what was. So with my little humorous summer to stable, summer implying it wasn't stable, is saying this is no longer am I in this season where I'm not stable. So even just kind of giving your brain this equipment to be like, oh, okay, something's different. It's changing. It's very, very important. Okay. Now, part of the completion process, there's many different ways to do this, but the one I think is really helpful for you and what I want to share is just doing a quick after action review. I do this actual process with a lot of my people when I'm doing business or executive coaching, and it's 3 simple questions. If you've paid attention, you will have heard them here before. And the first question is, what worked? Okay, this is when you get to celebrate. You know what? I had a phenomenal person that I had come cleaning my house over the summer. That worked. Or it might be in your didn't work category. What didn't work? I didn't have any support with my housekeeping. Something like that. Or it can be much more related to your child. What didn't work is I did not have anybody to go to reach out for support when I needed help with my son's socialization or lack thereof. And so let me just review, since I kind of went into like giving you examples. The first question is, what worked? Okay, spend some time here celebrating yourself and what you did. This is when you get to acknowledge yourself. This is when you get to acknowledge your family, your support systems, maybe even have some gratitude. And then, yes, look at the other side. Second question, what didn't work? You'll probably have a lot of things here, and that's okay. If you aren't able to answer the first question, what worked? Why don't you just spend some time there and find stuff. Challenge yourself a little bit here. And the last question, the question that lays the foundations for the next chapter, is, what will I do differently? And I could ask this question 100 different ways, but really it's saying, what do I want to be different? Okay. So with this insight, you're going to be able to, again, build this next season, what I'm calling season of stable. And notice the way that these questions are formatted. It's not about blame. It's not about what didn't you do well enough. It's about observation. It's about what opportunities you see. And again, reiterating, the last question ends up being like a little bit of a roadmap for you. So that's kind of like looking back and saying, okay, this is the season. That's our observation. This is our after action review. And now let's kind of turn a little bit more to you personally, because that's kind of always what I have my mind on. A lot of you all want more kind of content on, I'm trying to think of an example, like something very related to how to help your child with something. And I don't blame you. I think we all need help in that area. But this podcast is focused on you. Now, I do realize that having help for your child does directly help you. And yet I'm singularly focused on talking to you and what you need and having you meet your needs, because I have every bit of confidence that your brilliance can then provide for your child. Okay, that's a side note. Second step is assessing your current state. This is you. You're at the end of the runway. Again, your tire fell off of your plane and it's a little bit on fire. This is you being like, okay, what's going on? Okay, so we don't have a tire. We're a little bit on fire, but we do have a lot of water in the back of that hall there. I don't know. Again, I just love these analogies. So a personal inventory and just a quick brainstorm of areas you might want to look would be like your body. How's your body feeling? I know my body hurts, actually. I have some physical therapy lined up for this next season because it's time to fix my shoulders. It's time to figure out why my hip hurts, do those things. So that's actually body. Your mind. And this can be mind can be a lot of things. I would look at this as what have your overarching thoughts been? How's your attitude been? What are the things you're most commonly thinking of? And moving on to emotional, which obviously will be related to your mind. Emotional. How are you doing emotionally? Do you feel full, empty, disconnected, numb? Maybe you feel so connected. Maybe you have actually cultivated some great community over summer. So this doesn't have to all be negative, clearly. Spiritual, looking at financial, how are you? Relational, environment, this your house, your physical space, and we could go on. So there might be something missing there. Add it to your list because, you're a complex being. All right, that's your inventory. That's just making an observation and can be okay, how am I now? You have more information. You have more information from the first two steps to be okay, given how I am now, how this last season was, and what I want in the future, the next step is declare what will be. This is essentially answering the question, what will you generate in this season? In other words, what do you want? Maybe it's peace. Maybe it's connection. Maybe it's play. Maybe it's restoration. Maybe it's resources. Maybe it's really just equipping yourself to provide for your child so that you do have more space for yourself. So the question here again to contemplate is, what will you generate in this season? And the declaration word, I want to emphasize that declaring what will be is looking ahead in the future and deciding ahead of time what will be. And there's a power in this actually, because you're actually acknowledging this is not what we have now, but I'm deciding, I'm saying it will be so in the future. I don't want you to miss the actual emphasis on you designing and declaring the future. And putting this to words and actually going a little step further than just having fleeting wants that are missing is really, really important. So based on what you want, based on what this declaration is, the next question is, what's next? So you want to have better support. I'll use myself as an example. One thing that I am going to generate in this next season, like this foundation of support, and actually it's going to be probably like a year-long process to get the support that I need. And I'm looking already ahead at next summer. Okay, what will next summer look like? Because it's not going to look like this summer. And so knowing what will be in the future. So one of the things that I have declared will be in the future for myself is having social supports and social coaching for my son so that he can have access to community with independence that doesn't depend on me. And I don't have this fully fleshed out yet. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, to be clear, but that's what I'm saying will be done. It will be so. And so what's the next step? Like, okay, if that's going to be what happens, what's the next step? For me, it's funding. How am I going to secure the funding that will make this more possible? That's my first action. And so that's what I'm working on now. I don't need to worry about, oh my gosh, it's going to be so hard to find somebody, because that's like 3 steps down the line. I'm just working on the first step. I want to pause there for a second to say, oftentimes we get stuck on step 5 or being afraid we're not going to get step 5 completed when we haven't even started step 1. And so I'm asking you to kind of put blinders on and just do step 1, because guess what? Probably you're going to learn something in step 1 that may inform how possible you think step 5 is. I realize I'm talking theoretical here, but I think it's working. So hopefully it is. Again, just focus on step 1. Otherwise, you'll focus on step 5 and you'll stop. Okay, that's what's predictable. So we're doing not what's predictable, we're doing what works. Step 1. Now, this is kind of an added bonus. You don't have to do this. It just adds a little bit of fun to it. I was thinking, it'd be fun to name the chapter. And I might stick with this thing because it makes me laugh, shifting from summer to stable. I might just actually have that be my next chapter. Or it might just be stability and fun. I don't know what it'll be. I haven't done this work actually in completion yet, so I'm going to be doing this. I'll tell you more about that later. But just think, what would you call this season? And, spoiler alert, it might just simply be calling it the 2 words that you want, play and recovery, restoration and connection. I don't know, community and play. It could be a lot of different things. But give it a name. I like to add little bonus challenges, right? So here's one last little tip challenge for you. Actually do the work. I've given you very clear questions. I also will do you the favor, or actually Andy will do you the favor of writing them in the show notes so that you're Kara, I'm doing the dishes right now, or I'm driving to an appointment. I can't right now. I get it, right? You're listening to a podcast, so you can't do these 2 things at one time. And, do you really want to listen to it again to have to go do this thing? No, you don't. You want to have it easy and accessible. So we're going to do that for you. And it's going to be in the show notes. I'm going to have the outline that'll make a lot more sense once you listen to the episode over on the podcast website. So you go find it there. It'll be your little guide to do this work when you do it. What I recommend is actually schedule time on your calendar. I'd say 1 hour is sufficient to do this. This is not like a life map. You don't have to spend a whole weekend doing it. I'm a big calendar girl, so I would put it on my calendar. I think you should, but it's because I'm a calendar girl. But I also recognize not everybody really works that way. So write it on a Post-it, write it on your wrist, whatever will work for you. That's what's most important. So I have scheduled the day after my kids go back to school, 1 hour in my calendar to do the work and really get clear on like, okay, what is this next chapter season, the season of stable, look like for me? And as I was writing this episode and on also concurrently putting it in my calendar, because, like I do the things that I tell you all to do. And I was like, you know what? This would be so much fun to do together. There's this concept I learned like years ago called power hour. And it's when you just find a common hour and all come together to create this little bit of collective energy and accountability. So it's like, okay, I'm doing this thing for me at, I think it's 11 o'clock on Thursday, the 22nd. And that's Pacific Standard Time. So you have to do the translation. And how fun is it to like gather on a call and be like, okay, we're all here. We all have an hour. Like we're focused. We're not going to go process more insurance paperwork or go try to schedule appointments during this time. Like we're going to spend this hour on us. It's just enough accountability to have it work, but to also have it be fun and light and not like, I'm going to go to like my accountability partner. No, it's this fun energy. So we're going to actually be doing this in the Pathway to Peace coaching community that I told you about at the beginning of this episode. So these are the kinds of things that we're going to be incorporating that I haven't really done as much of before. But again, it's to bring that collective energy, fun, and togetherness, face-to-face, realness. Okay. Now, I do hope you are interested. If you're like, ooh, this coaching community thing, like, sounds pretty cool. Or at least it sounds like it might help. It will help. That's my promise. I feel really confident because I get to hear the experience that, clients have as they're completing and or approaching the end of their program. And they're like, oh my gosh. And the thing they want more of is, you guessed it, community. So that's what we're creating. And so it's a simple reach out to me via my website. There's an easy contact form. That's easy. You can also go and schedule a consult, jump right in. I know it's a little bit like, oh my gosh, I'm taking this like step to actually talk to a human about what I want. And it's actually designed that way. I want you to have to really invest in yourself, even with this consultation. And so I want you to have a conversation. And of course, I can support you in making sure it's what you're looking for. And of course, give you resources if it's not. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Go to the show notes for the actual notes of this episode to do the work. And also join me in the coaching program via also the show notes. And if you jump right on this, you can join us in the community for the Power Hour to shift from summer to stable. I mean, that feels like a good place to end here. So with that, I'll see you on the next episode.